Lenin was radicalized by Chernyshevsky's novel What Is to Be Done. He got fired up by the novel's hero, this fella Rakhmetov, who slept on wooden planks, ate black bread, and worked manual labor just so he'd never forget what regular folks went through. Lenin read about a man who sleeps on a board studded with nails simply to prove that he can endure physical pain, and said to himself, "Sign me up, brother." Stalin grew up on nostalgic nationalism of Georgian poetry about hometown heroes who stood up to the Russian Tsars. Every story was basically, here's this fella from the mountains and he ain't taking shit from nobody. Most kids hear stories about how the prince saved the kingdom. Stalin heard. Then Uncle Georgy looked at the Tsar and said, "Buddy, you got about 5 seconds." Different cultures, I suppose. Mao wasn't reading about little bears learning to share. Hell no. Mao grew up reading the Chinese classics over and over, Three Kingdoms, Journey to the West, stories about legendary warriors, loyal brotherhoods, and leaders of peasant rebellions. They celebrated courage, physical strength, and resistance. Every hero was built like an oak tree and angry at a dynasty. Fidel Castro read Hemingway differently than the rest of us. Most people finish For Whom the Bell Tolls saying, "Man, that was a good book." Fidel finished it thinking, all right, page 47, that's a tactic. He borrowed guerrilla warfare ideas and even followed Hemingway's rule, give the men tobacco and leave the women alone. Most novels leave readers with a favorite quote or perhaps a touching memory. Fidel was left with a field manual. It is, I suppose, one way to appreciate literature. Che Guevara got wounded in battle, figured this might be the end, and the first thing that came to his mind was a Jack London story. He thought about a man who knows he's gonna freeze to death out in Alaskan wilderness, so he just leans against a tree and gets ready to meet his maker. Most folks in that situation think about their mama. Che was over there thinking, Jack London really nailed this part. Think about that. Whatever you keep feeding your brain, that's what's gonna show up when life gets real. If it's true that you are what you read, maybe we've solved the mystery of why some people approach politics like it's fan fiction. Lenin read ascetics, Stalin read warrior poets, Mao read about peasant rebellions, Che read Jack London, Fidel read Hemingway for military tactics. Then, somebody asks AOC, "What's your favorite book?" "Harry Potter," she says with that excited grin people get when they're about to tell you they're a Hufflepuff. Nothing wrong with fantasy, of course. It's very entertaining. It simply becomes a little curious when politics begins to resemble it. The speeches become increasingly elaborate, the vocabulary increasingly mystical, and yet somehow, after 15 minutes of listening, one still finds oneself asking the rather old-fashioned question. Yes, but what exactly are you fucking talking about? Now, I'm not saying that's the whole explanation, but one crowd grew up asking, how do we organize society? The other crowd still waiting for Dumbledore to fix healthcare. Consider subscribing if you liked the video.